let me know whenever we're ready and we can just kind of get started.
We're good.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Hold on one second. We have forgotten to change the slide here. Everyone is seeing the behind the scenes and getting their money's worth. But welcome to the Harrisburg Real Estate Investors Meetup. We're just a small group of people that are, trying to help educate some people here on the local market and just real estate investing in general. I'm Chase Lauterback. I've been in the investing space for the past 5 to 6 years, flipping houses and doing rentals. I'm doing some commercial investment too. Mattias Clymer, he also works as a co-host here at the meetup. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Mattias?
Yeah, I'm Mattias. I'm a licensed agent with Funkhauser Real Estate Group. I've been a big fan of investment since I started, and have been working on a few deals for the past few years. But yeah, love the community and love getting people together and discussing these things. So
awesome. Yeah, and so we're going to hopefully be going back to in-person meetings within the next couple of months. That's our goal. Doing everything virtual has been kind of weird. As you're going, through the previous videos here on the site, you might see a bunch of different ways we start these meetings, but I'm trying to get more of a standard template going for them. But I guess the first thing is we have a market update for the Harrisonburg market. If you want to share your screen for that, Mattias, and then we can hop into the PowerPoint.
awesome. Is everybody able to see that?
Yep.
All right. So the same old in the sense that there are not enough houses to buy to meet the demand. We have seen a significant drop in inventory levels. That is 51% less than at this time last year. It was low last year. It's been low for years. The median sales price was $245. The number of house sales is 137, so 25% up above March of last year. And what is, I think, the interesting takeaway here is that we may actually see that there are more houses moving in this market, so that there may actually be more listings overall than there have been in the past years. However, people are just buying them quickly, so they don't stay on the market and thus don't really show that there's high inventory levels. You can see that the median days in the market was 8 compared to 18 of March in 2020. I'm telling all my buyers that you basically, if something hits the market, don't count on being able to see it in a few days. You want to see it, first or second day, ideally. Things are usually under contract by 3 days if it's going to be a popular property. Obviously, there's other ones that take a little bit longer, and that's why we have 8 days on the market as a median. So far, 322 houses have sold from January through March. That's 18% more than at the same time frame last year. Median sales price is $248,700 compared to $225 of last year. And the days on the market from January to March was also 8, and it was 21 last year.
All right, perfect. Pull this back up. Okay, so a couple of quick announcements. Our next meetup date is May 19th, same time as usual, 6 to 8. We're likely still going to be doing it virtual then, but we'll keep you posted. So May and June, we're looking like we're probably going to still be virtual, but hopefully by July, I think that's kind of what we're looking for, right, Mattias, is maybe July we can get back to being in person.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll still keep the virtual aspect where all the videos will be uploaded to the site though, but hoping at least be able to go in person again. So before we hop in here, I just want to say we want to make it, I don't want to just be talking at you guys. I want to make it so that if at any point anything comes up through this kind of overview of getting into the next investment property, just feel free to unmute yourselves and speak up because, somebody's probably thinking the same question you are. And I have a lot on some of these slides, but I'm not going to be obviously reading from them. So I'm just going to go over, and that way, you're not bored to death over the next 2 hours of this kind of PowerPoint. And then the final thing before I hop into it is I'd like to thank Bailey. He helped out with a lot of these slides here. It's just been hectic. So big shout out to Bailey for coming through and getting some of the PowerPoint done. So here's a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. And the goal being that, again, if you have absolutely no idea what you're doing when it comes to real estate investing, then we're going to give you a lot of things to think about. And then the answers enough questions to where you can figure out what your next step is going to be. So that's basically the goal for here today. So getting started, we're going to cover goal setting and strategy. So what type of investment strategy you're looking to do, how to source funds and get a loan pre-approval, finding and analyzing deals, and then making offers is actually going to be part of part 2. So we'll have that done next month. So for getting started, you need to just learn as much as possible and try to educate yourself, meet other people that are in the field already. If you're in the meetup, then you're doing a great job of doing that because you're going to be around like-minded people, especially if you're coming to the in-person ones. They were much greater turnout generally. But for relationships and building relationships, you can come to meetups, find mentors from the meetups, and a great way to actually find yourself a mentor is to bring value to them. So something they might be struggling with in their business, or you might be able to help them with, is another way to get your foot in the door. And then education is extremely important. Real estate investing, you've got a lot of leverage and depending on your strategy. So you need to make sure that you're not going in blind, or, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. So you want to just make sure that you've got some education on your back for that. So for the goals, there's a lot of different ways of doing goal setting. What a lot of people preach is figure out your why. And some of these questions are just to help you figure out what is your goal with real estate investing. Just like to do it? Are you trying to get out of your 9-to-5 job as soon as possible? Do you want to just build long-term wealth and keep your job if you like your job? Tax benefits. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that you could do. I mean, what might make sense for you as an investment might not make sense for other people. So, for example, if you're looking to quit your 9-to-5 jobs, you might want to invest in a higher cash flow properties, maybe do short-term rentals, but you might be trading your job for another job by managing those properties. Do you want to build your wealth and don't need much cash flow? Then you could basically do like burst strategies. You could also buy other types of properties that, like certain commercial properties, requires more money, but you don't get as much cash flow. So a lot of tax write-offs and appreciation benefits in the future. And one of the important things when you're thinking about what your goals should be as you're going through all these different strategies is how much time do you have to spend to be investing, and how much time do you want to be investing in real estate, and how active or passive do you want to be? So by active or passive, we mean, are you going to be having to stay on top of managers? Are you going to be self-managing properties or projects, or passive, where I know we have some members in the group and they just invest in what are called syndications, and you basically have the operations turned over to another investor that does the operations for you for a return on your money. These are all things to keep in mind. Any questions on goals or any thoughts, guys that are here, that you like to bring up?
I was thinking of Devin in this, just your transition from, I don't know if you want to speak about that at all, but obviously you've been very hands-on and you're moving to more passive, right?
Right. You mean like how to do it, or how to go about doing it, or what?
Would you do it again the way, or do you want to give a little bit of an overview of what you did?
Oh, if I was going to do it, I would have started sooner in the passive part, because they take care of all the stuff and you don't have to do anything for it, and the returns are still there. but you have to vet the syndicators, the operators. The most important thing is to make sure that the guys that are running these projects are who they say they are. And so when you look at each syndication, you're really looking at the operator and what's his past record. Does he do what he say he's going to do? How has he performed in the past? And if you're confident that going forward, the same, this person can perform, then you can start looking at the deals they come up with. Okay, here's the latest project they're syndicating, and you go from there and then run the numbers. And if it's right now, a lot of the syndications are having when they get to the A classes, they're doing they're down now almost to a 4 cap. If there starts to be a 3 in front of it, I wouldn't do another one. I'd wait until they come back up, because I think when you get to a 3, anything with a 3 in front of it, you're starting to get to the point where these guys go out 3 to 5 years and refinance. And 3 to 5 years from now, you guys are in real estate. What do you think it's going to be? You don't know. And if they have to refinance at, say, now they can get 3.5, on a syndication, and then they go 5 years from now, they're going up to a 5.5 or 6, who knows? That 3 something cap now is going to be hard to make money on even in the future, unless you've did some amazing job of creating more NOI at, the bottom line, like raise the rents or did some renovation value add or something like that. And that's the only way that they can increase the value. And, but then again, they're going to put all their money back into refinancing if that interest rate goes up. So that's where I'm at on that. I kind of have to watch what's, to invest in the future and doing passive. So, and you guys are looking at investment properties now, if you were looking at a house or something like that, well, can it rent for enough to cover all your expenses? It's probably getting pretty hard to do right now. So I don't have a really good answer as far as where it's going in the future. But they always say there's always a deal somewhere.
Yeah.
Like Brian had on the Liberty Street. He's got it,
Right.
I went and looked it up just out of curiosity. That house is right next to Moped City. So
I just find it,
that is.
I was just finding your perspective interesting, since you've done both, and that's coming from managing properties or buying investment properties, right, and being really hands on to going to the syndication route. So I appreciate your input.
They're out there. You just have. There's operators out there now that they strictly do B+ and A properties. You have to learn that whole lingo and what they stand for and all that. Then there's people that like to do strictly C+ and Bs, and then there's guys that like to do Cs with some work that needs to go with it to value add, and they enjoy doing that. And but most of them won't touch anything under a C, and so I don't know where those properties are going to go. That'd be for the diehard adventurous type, want to take one of those on.
Yeah,
but they're still out there.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's just like you're saying, the market shifted too, to where it's either you have to spend more in marketing or more time in relationships or just patience. And with the other side of the equation of you got to be ready to go as soon as an opportunity arises. So you're patient, but you're ready to strike.
One of the benefits of syndications is that the cost segs, the depreciation and all that kind of stuff is through the roof. I mean, and you can almost wipe out all your rental income with some of these syndications, and which they don't talk about that much, day to day, and some of these other YouTubers and stuff like that. They don't talk too much about that, but man, the tax savings is great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we kind of want to highlight here too, is with the cost tag, that's like enhanced depreciation essentially. But here's some of the benefits too behind just rental or real estate investing in general. This is more, you're obviously not going to get depreciation or excessive interest write-offs if you're flipping it, but if you're flipping your property. But here's some things just to keep in mind. So a number of these may not apply depending on your strategy, but those are some of the.
Yeah, but the depreciation on just a rental property, you're probably just going to take, let's say you had a $200,000 rental property, you're going to subtract the land value and then divide it by the number of years you can depreciate, and that's, you're going to call it that. Whereas these apartment owners, the syndications, they hire these firms to go in and do a complete analysis and break every living thing or down to a year and a month and how fast you can depreciate that stuff off, and then they report it. But it has to be somebody that's in the business of doing that. You can't just go in yourself and say, hey, I'm going to depreciate this a little faster than what the government says or whatever. You got to have some information. You got to have some facts and figures and be able to back up what you're doing.
We could chat more after too, Devin, but you might be interested in, especially where they're going with cap rates and everything, more mobile home park investing, because they do similar things.
I do that with Paul Moore.
What's that?
I do that with Paul Moore.
Oh, okay. You're with Elevation Capital Group then for that one?
Wellington.
Yeah, but he partners with Elevation Capital Group to do because they do self-storage and mobile home parks.
Oh, he's got like 4 people he does it with. He's got 4 operators now.
Okay, I knew Ryan Smith was his main one there in that space, but okay, for strategies, so here's several different strategies for you to get into your next investment property. So you've got the BRRRR, which if anybody is here from Bigger Pockets, they're probably familiar with that. So you're buying a distressed property or a property that has some way to increase the value, renovating it, renting it, and then refinancing at that new higher value to pull all of your money back out to then go and invest in another property. The next is short-term rentals. So they're very popular around here in Page County and over in Rockingham County, McGaheysville area. And then you have house hacking. So I'm sure people are familiar with that too, where, you buy a house and either maybe you can rent out one whole level to somebody or certain rooms. Usually that's maybe for the younger crowd, but 1 to 4 unit multifamilies also could kind of be qualified as house hacking in a sense of that you can qualify for those residential loans as well. So you don't have to have a whole lot of money to put down. Then standard, there's conventional loans where for investment properties, you're going to want 20 to 25% down of your own cash in order to buy them. And then partnering. So if you know of another real estate investor, you find a deal, they bring the money, maybe you bring part of the money, whatever you guys can work out in a deal, are some ways to get into your next property. So for financing strategies, this kind of builds on the last slide a little bit, and we're not going to get in the weeds of what all of these are, but these are just kind of things that I'll go over really quickly in a high level of what they are. So seller financing is basically the seller's the bank for you. Generally, they're not going to have to research your credit or, do extensive background checks on you, paperwork like banks will do. The next is cross-collateralization and equity lines of credit. So this assumes you already own a property that has equity in it, and then you can use that equity to buy another deal. The third one is what are called subject to or master lease. There's other additional strategies, but subject to is buying a property with the current loan staying in place. It's a tricky strategy. It's definitely not something that you want to do starting off because there are some risks that you have to be aware of, and so does the person on the other end of the transaction. Master lease. This is essentially where you get a right to control and operate the property with the ability to purchase it for a certain price at some set date in the future. Conventional loan was what we were just discussing on the last slide as a standard loan. And then the FHA, VA, and USDA loans. VA and USDA can help you get into a residential property. If you're maybe looking to house hack, you've got to be, a little cautious of what the clauses on those loans say you can and can't do with the property. But FHA, there are 2 different types of loans there that might work for you if you're looking to do a house hacking situation or you're buying a property that needs some renovation. So there's what's called a 203K loan that will have the renovation proceeds go with it. So first we're just going to touch on is the BRRRR strategy. We already went over what it is, but you just have to make sure that you have enough equity in the property after renovation to refinance it. It's just one thing to keep in mind. You also want to make sure that you're cash flowing or at least breaking even after the refinance. So you need to know what your strategy is going up front, what you're going to be getting after the fact, after the refinance, and really look at your hidden costs. So a lot of people they either forget about the HOA fees that you may have, taxes, insurance. They don't set money aside for CapEx or vacancy. Right now, with the way the market is, people just aren't even looking at vacancy as being a thing that happens in the market. But it's always best to make sure that you have that set aside in case that, when the market does change. Another thing to keep in mind is when you go to refinance, let's say you've checked all the boxes so far, most banks are going to require at least 6 months for you to own the property as like a seasoning period before they'll let you refinance and pull your capital back out. Next, we're going to go into short-term / vacation rentals. So the pros on this is potentially, depending on your location and your business with Airbnbs, you can have the highest cash flow. And so I say business because it's generally much more hands-on, and you do need to have more knowledge and treat it like a business in order to be successful with it. All real estate is a business, but more so short-term rentals is going to just require more of your time. So that goes back to the active / passive, discussion we were talking about earlier for your goals. So much more management intensive, harder to analyze in the sense of you can't, pull comps on what market rate is and know that you're basically going to get this income amount every month. The seasons of use of your property will fluctuate depending on, what the season is, or even things like COVID. Airbnbs for our area were shut down for a couple months. So vacancies can therefore be more sporadic, and you also have to be on the lookout for regulations, which can be changing. So one thing we like to keep in mind with short-term rentals that we look at is, let's say worst case scenario, that area passes regulations against them. What are you going to do with the property? So as long as you can still sell it and think about your worst case scenario and you're covered, then it's likely going to make sense for you. House hacking. So again, I'm not going to read through everything, but it's just, again, you're purchasing a property that's 1 to 4 units. Maybe it's just a single family house, you're renting out rooms. And generally when you're doing this, it's easier to finance because it's your primary residence. So you can get lower down payments on your loans, better interest rates, and all the benefits of owning real estate. So the tax benefits and appreciation benefits. So for conventional loans, you have to either save up 20% of the down payment, or you have to get it from some sort of line of credit, another investor. So this is kind of the best option if you don't want to be over leveraged and just want something that's simple. The con of that is it's slow, not extremely scalable, and can quickly exhaust your money. So seller financing is interesting in the sense of it's whatever you and the seller can agree to. So if you work out with the seller that you want to put 5% or even 0% down, then that's completely fine. You can work it out to where you don't even have payments for a couple months, or it's interest only for a year. It's whatever you're able to come to terms with. I have some examples on the screen about why people would agree to something like that. And a lot of times those lower down payments or not getting cashed out all at once, depending on the price of the property, can make a lot of tax benefit sense to the seller. So some things to keep in mind about this strategy, though, is you don't want to rush right into it to offering or asking about seller financing. That's just because it makes you seem like you don't have the money to do a traditional loan. And the other thing is that the seller is now your bank, so you need to have a track record or some way to show that you'll be able to make the payment. So if you're starting out, they may still not ask anything about it. It's just have that prepared in case they may. Oh, so this for equity lines of credit and cross collateralization, you're just using property that has equity to buy other property. So your lender will be able to do that for you. I've got the definitions on the screen of exactly how that works. With both of those strategies, you just want to be very careful that you aren't overextending yourself. Cross collateralization is interesting in the sense of I've noticed in my area for other investors that are older, it is a very common strategy. So they buy one, maybe two properties, pay one off, and then use that one that's paid off to just keep using as like a line of credit and keep rolling, keep buying property. So between that and the equity lines of credit, I've just seen a lot of investors in the area use those. You just have to be careful with them. The next is hard money. If you're looking to flip property, if you're in the wholesaling business, then I'm sure you've heard of hard money lenders. The benefit of those are that they're going to be looking more at the asset as opposed to your capitalization, your credit score, all of that sort of thing. So they can generally close quicker. They're going to buy properties in worse condition that won't qualify for a conventional loan. So the catch with this too, another thing is that it's expensive in the sense of they'll charge what are called points and higher interest rates. And generally they're still going to be requiring a good amount down. So I've seen anywhere from, again, hard money lenders vary. It's kind of like seller financing in the sense of some will put 10% of the property plus the renovation is what they want you to have down as that 10%. Others may want 30% of just the purchase price for you to put down. So in other terms, if you're getting a property for $100,000 and that's what you're purchasing it for, some of these lenders will want you to put 30 grand down. They will only finance 70,000 of that 100,000 purchase price. And you also have to finance your renovation. So good just to have a relationship with hard money lenders, know what you're going in with first. It's not one of those things where if you're planning on using a hard money lender, just as a thought, I would not get a deal and just say, I'm going to use hard money on this. I would have a relationship with whichever hard money lender or two you're going to be using. And that way, you know what you're agreeing to. The next is private money. It's kind of similar to hard money in that it's, you're not going through a bank or anything. And it's just a loan from someone that you know. So it could be a family member, friend, or work relationship. So the benefits to this are you can get potentially better terms than hard money and better interest rates, but it can still be expensive, so more than the conventional rate. And obviously, if something goes wrong, then you just have to make sure that your investor in this sense is always covered. So if you're not honest or something, you've got your word on the line there. So those are your risks, and just make sure that you've got all of that kind of covered. So conventional financing, we already went over. That was the standard financing, and those are not an exhaustive list of financing options, but a great way to get started. So does anybody have any questions on those or any thoughts on those?
Hey, I actually had a quick question, Chase.
Sweet. Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. So it wasn't about like the financing. It was more about the short-term rentals and the Airbnb.
Yeah.
So I think it might have been last year. So I'm aware things might have changed, but I remember this one property. I was trying to wholesale it to a guy that wanted to do like a short-term rental. And I think the city of Harrisonburg had said they're not allowing Airbnb. Do you guys know if that's a rule still, or maybe like what the regulations are?
It's Yeah, it has changed a lot, but most recently it has to be your primary residency to be able to, that's the biggest like hurdle. It has to be your primary residency to use it as an Airbnb.
Got you. And is
And then
that
it
because
gets
of
more,
like, yeah, is that because of like the short supply in the area, or is there like other?
I'm guessing that's part of the logic behind it is that they want to, I know that affordable housing is a concern. And so if they are encouraging as a city, to have people buy Airbnbs and use it for that purpose, that might look bad if they're also saying they want to support, affordable housing options because that would maybe make it more competitive.
Right. Got you. No, that makes sense. That's kind of, yeah, that was my question on it. I know it was kind of tricky here.
The city has a good page on it if you just want the bullet points. We also did a presentation, last month or a couple months ago with Airbnb. So that's on harrisburgrei.com. You can rewatch that if you want to.
Got you. Yeah, I'll check it out. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you touched on that. I know you definitely touched on the city of Harrisonburg, but did you also covered Rockingham County, because Rockingham County, from what we were getting, was essentially they just had you had to have like a business license, you paid a tax on your income, and that was pretty much it.
If it's in a town, if like Bridgewater, Dayton, that they have their own kind of regulations. Rockingham is pretty open. So yeah, the county is pretty free and clear. If you're not in a town at all, then it's like there's really nothing that is stopping you from doing it.
Yeah.
Got you.
So that's something to keep in mind. If you find something else that guy might want to Airbnb, you can at least tell him, you can help him out with that. It makes it easier than the whole county being like that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we're going to get on to finding and analyzing deals. So what I'm going to say before we hop into this is there is a lot of information online about finding deals. And we actually have, I believe, a couple of videos on the site. We've done a couple different meetups on that topic just specifically. So I'm not going to get super in depth on that, just some high level ways of, finding deals. So for example, direct mail, if you got bandit signs, always check with your municipality or figure out what you're going to do with that, because a lot of areas do not like bandit signs. And then have networking under marketing in the sense of word of mouth, and just making good relationships can be just as good as direct mail or marketing on other avenues. We've got realtors. So making good relationships with local realtors, having them understand that, what you do in the area, what you're buying, what you're looking for. It is trickier in this market right now. We're in April 2021. And I mean, in my county, I have 18 listings on the market. So having realtors where they're going to, really bring something to you first, or some situation like that, is just difficult. Also, a lot of regulations have been passed on that recently. So there's, it's pocket listings are, I'm not going to say a thing of the past, but they're really difficult to come by now. But having a relationship with the realtor, they can still give you a heads up on properties that are coming on the market and alert you as soon as something does come up that meets your criteria. Zillow and Redfin, other third-party sites, they are still good. I mean, you'll still see people that do for sale by owner on them. There's a lot of data on those sites, so they can help you track deals as well. So things that have come off the market. And then the last one that we're going to just touch on is auctions. So they're, online auction sites or in-person auctions at the particular county you're invested in at their courthouse. They'll have auctions. And then we'll do how to analyze deals. So analyzing a general market that you're looking to get in case you're looking to do something remote or going into a new market. And then rental and ARV comps and estimating repairs. So, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to again hop in, because we're actually kind of wrapping up. We're gonna go through this pretty quickly. So anyway, for analyzing a market, here's some things that are just good practice to look for. So you want to make sure that your population is growing or at least stable. You don't want to have where people are moving out of the area, and same with jobs growing. because if the population is declining, if jobs are leaving, then what's going to happen to the housing market? Also, look at national average or lower unemployment, and same with national average or lower housing vacancy rate. These may not be as big of a concern to you depending on what your strategy is. So if you're flipping, you're really not going to care too much about the unemployment or housing vacancy rate as long as your house is going to sell. You may not care as much about the population or job growth long term if you're not planning on staying in that market long term for that strategy, for example. But these are things just to keep in mind and look out for and think about depending on what your goals are. And finally, if you are looking for something long term where you're investing in a specific area, you may want to look at the quality of schools. So Mattias may be able to talk about that a little bit more, but from the realtor perspective, I'm sure a lot of your clients, especially if they're looking for a flip, if they're looking at buying a house that was a flip or something like that, they're probably going to look at what district the school is in, right? So where their kids are going to go.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely plays a factor, and there's trends. And yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a big factor. I know that there's a little bit of a stain on the city school districts in Harrisonburg right now, as far as some people don't want there to be their kids to go there. However, there's also a pretty good population that actually prefers, wants the city, and that's because of like the dual immersion and those kind of things. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but and especially if you're flipping a property in Harrisonburg for like the 200,000, 240 range is the ultimate sales price, it's not going to matter at all. There's going to be buyers for that. And it's niched. Like, so if you want to flip a $400,000 property, it might be a little bit harder, but you're probably gonna be a little bit better off if you're in like the Spotswood or TA district, for example.
Yeah. So like what he was just saying is really important too, because depending on what price range you're flipping or investing in and what market you're in. So I'm in Page County, Mattias is in Rockingham County. It's going to really just depend on your particular area. So for Harrisonburg, it sounds like there's a good buyer pool for both types of school districts, but some areas are not like that. They absolutely do not want to be in a certain district. So this is all things that you can kind of find out from making a nice relationship with a local realtor to help you with this stuff. And again, this all just depends on your investment strategy, but just something to keep in mind there. So at the very end, we're going to have just a list of sites that are helpful for a bunch of different things, depending on whatever strategy you like to for your investment properties. But one that I like to look at, it's called datausa.io. And this is not the entire site. It's just a little glimpse of what you can see in the market. So it shows that, Harrisonburg's got 131K population and it's growing. Household median income is growing. Property value is growing. Employees are growing. So jobs are growing. Everything looks really good from an investment standpoint. Also here at the bottom, you can check out more about what type of employers it is. Bigger investments, you're going to look at how diverse is the employment, different things like that, but we're not really getting into that today. So we're going to get into rental and ARV comps. So just going to kind of have it to these two different funnels, so to speak, in the sense of if your strategy is doing a long-term rental, then here are some ways that you can pull comps. So basically high level is looking at local property management companies and asking them what you can get for comps, checking Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, apartments.com. You could also Google, Harrisonburg 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for rent and see what other rental properties come up and try to have a comparable that way. And then the third and final is using a site like Rentometer or Rentometer. I'm not quite sure how they say it, but I've used that before in the past, and that can be a little bit more localized where you are. So, some markets rent may be $1,000 for the home over here, but in this section of the city, it's $800. So that can help with that a little bit. It is free for a few searches, but afterwards then you have to pay for it. So those are a couple of researches for rental comps. If you're looking to obtain ARV, then here are a couple of ways to do so. So working with an investor-friendly realtor to have them pull some comps. I I will just say, if you're going to go that option, make sure that you're very cognizant of the realtor's time. A lot of them are just very busy right now if they're good. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that you're just building a relationship and very cognizant of their time. Another is using sites like Redfin or Zillow. I hate to point people towards Zillow because some of the information there is just not accurate at all, especially depending on what your market is. But I'm actually going to do a quick little live case study of how to do comps, and we're not talking about Zestimate. So this is actually how to comp and get a better idea instead of using the Zestimate. And the final is, as you get better in your market, you're going to have rules of thumb that you can base on square footage. So for example, in my farm areas where I am, if there's just a standard house that's 1,200 to 1,700 square feet, it doesn't have any impressive feature like land or anything like that. It's just standard cookie cutter, no big positives or negatives. I'm 130 a square foot once I'm all done with a renovation is a pretty safe number. That's actually gone up a little bit with the way the market's been, but that's just a rough rule of thumb. So what I'm going to do now is switch on over to Zillow. And again, I want to make it interactive. So if you guys have any questions or anything, or like have any areas in general, is anybody working on a deal they want to, or maybe a neighborhood they're curious about comping, we could run real quick. If not, I'll just do Elkton. So this isn't perfect, and depending on rural areas, it can make it a little tricky, but we are going to just assume you have a property. Let's see. Do you work Elkton a lot, Mattias?
Actually, not a ton. I have sold in there, but
let's just do something. I mean, this isn't a big neighborhood. I can't remember how many houses are back in here. So first thing is to clear all of this out. All right, so I am actually not familiar with this area at all, which is good. So in the sense of, I don't know, like the back of my hand, whoops. Not sure what's happening here. I'm saying I don't know what that particular neighborhood is like. So try this one more time. This is how you know it's live. So remove the boundary, and then let's just say there is a lot of home sales, and for some reason, again, solds are not popping up. Search it one more time. This might not happen, guys.
Zillow's being difficult.
Yeah, I've never had this issue before. But I'll try it one more time. If it happens again, then we'll just move on. But I will just kind of verbally talk you through how to do it. So let's see. That'll work. All right, so it's not going to work for us today, but I'll just kind of show you how it would work and how you would comp it if this was cooperating with us. And it may be because of Zoom why it's doing this. I'm not sure, but what we generally look for is, let's say you have a property here on Jackson Avenue, and you're going to want to stay on the side of a main road. You can draw this area here to make like a little box around this subdivision. Let's say we know that that area is like a specific subdivision. You can apply it here. but we're going to pretend that it would apply. And basically what will happen then is it will pop up all of the sold comps in that particular neighborhood for that area. And then depending on how many you get, you can you're either going to have to expand that area, maybe include this side of the street too, or, try to research and see maybe down here is more similar to this neighborhood. But once you have enough comps, then you can whittle it down by your beds and baths here. You're only going to want, let's say, houses, or if you're looking at a townhome, then only townhomes. And then the next big thing that usually whittles out a lot of it in our area is just having a square footage range, a lot range, and sold in the last year, for example. That'll more than likely get you enough comps. And that's pretty much it. That'll get you a good idea. Let's say you get 6 total from that in order to get a feel of what your property would likely sell for. And if you still have more, then you can make things even more specific with if it has a basement, et cetera. So any questions on that?
I was a little bit curious. I know that they pull recent sales, right? I mean, it's not like they would have too old of sales. Do you know what the rough, how long ago it was that it sold?
You're trying to say like if it would pull, let's say, in the last 30 days from county records?
Well, more like it wouldn't show you like a 2-year-old sale kind of thing.
It would, yeah.
Okay.
So that's one thing you do have to be careful of when you're using Zillow comps. If you're in an area like I am where it's rural, they will show you comps that are like old. So let's see if we can get an example here. I think it's sorted by new, so let's look at the last page.
And just in case people aren't aware while you're doing that, an appraiser will try to look for a 6-month or newer comp. And just to kind of keep it more current with what the current market is doing. Certainly, if you're looking to analyze something now, things have gone up significantly. Like I think it's like 11% over the last year. So you'd want to try to account for some of that by finding a property that's more similar. Or if you're looking at a property that's a little bit older, maybe do increase the value a little bit by that 11%. I don't usually go quite 11% when I'm doing it, but just know there's appreciation that's happened in the market.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially about how you were saying with like the percentages. Yeah, I mean, if you found like an older home that sold a year ago and the market's gone up 11%, I would probably give it like 8. What would you do, Mattias?
Yeah, I would say so I typically factor in about 3% when I'm doing analysis. Which is a more standard, amount. So for this, part of it is on my feeling. Like I kind of know the market, but I will often go, 5 to 8 at least. And I think it's, if you're doing analysis, you probably want to be more on the conservative side, just so to make sure that things will work out in your favor. So that will probably give you a good idea of 5 to 8% will probably be a good thing right now for your rate.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So like that kind of goes back to your strategy again. If you were looking to flip, then probably 8% would be a good gauge of just being on the safe side since the market itself has gone up 11. If you're looking to do buy and hold, then that percentage last year was crazy. So you'd probably, like you were saying, just want to be 2 to 3% is like what your annual average expected growth is, which is pretty hand in hand with what inflation is. So yeah, unfortunately it's not working. I can't even sort by new, but I believe it goes back until about 2018 now. So it's about 3 years. So just be aware that you need to, after you run your comps, sort by the newest and try to only get comps like Mattias was saying within the past 6 months.
And it's probably a lot better to use old comps now than it would be if things slow down. Because you're going to get you're going to have more competition. It's going to be better than you expected this way.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Chase.
Yeah.
What if you I've looked at the Zillows before and the sold, and every once in a while there's an outlier in there where it's like probably a $250,000 house and it sold for like $83,250. What's with that?
Just throw it out. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't know if there's maybe like a relationship that went on because they do pull like courthouse records. So maybe a family member sold it to another family member. They worked out a deal outside of the contract that was recorded in the courthouse.
Yeah.
So that happens, especially with like families. Another thing is it could have been an inherited situation. It's just some of those just got to throw them out. If it looks weird, it probably is. So one thing when you're doing your comps that I like to do as well is Redfin used to be able to do something very similar to Zillow, and I'd have to check to see if you can still do it, and that you could outline your area, do the same comp like how we did on Zillow, but they would list them. So they would show the list and they'd give you an average square footage price. And what I would do with those is just throw out the highest one and then the lowest one, you know what I mean? Or you might have to throw out the highest two and the lowest two, just depending on how far of outliers they are, and then find your average from there. Those are things that you can do just to make sure that you have a well-grounded price per square foot for that area. But yeah, to answer I guess the long-winded answer to that question is I don't know. I mean, it's probably one of those situations I was talking about. That would be if I had to.
Inherited or family member sounds like the best answer.
Yeah.
Makes the most sense now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. And see, with inherited too, you run into a lot of situations where there's 3 siblings. So, one sibling might pay 50 grand to the other 2. And that's what it is, because his share of it was worth 100. So he's paying, you know what I mean? Like they work out stuff like that.
Whatever the percentage is.
Yeah.
Got to pay the other siblings whatever the percentage was of their share.
Yeah. Of the discounted family price, of the house or whatever too. So
they could have got it for half price or 2/3 or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's a really good way of, if you're just getting into the game or you're just trying to find comps really quick, that is one way to kind of do it. Another resource that I have at the end here that I like to use if possible is something similar to like iComps. And this is definitely not a hard and fast thing, but all right, it's not going to pull up. I think it's because of the Zoom screen share.
Well, I would think that would also be a good piece of property for you guys to go knock on the door or find out who owns it, because
there you go.
Maybe that's what they got it for. And hey, you come and say, hey, your house is worth 250. I saw you got it for 88 something. And they say, oh, I inherited blah, 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 and hey, maybe they want to sell it.
Yeah.
Money out of it.
That's a good idea. That's a good point. Yeah, look through those. What's that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to throw out homesnap.com as well, just for people as an alternative to Zillow.
Yeah. HomeSnap's good too. iComps I would put as like the last, as the most accurate way of doing things, but it's still a pretty good tool. I'll try to do it, but it's hit or miss as if it's going to pull up because it'll look for the particular address, the property you're looking for, and it's hit or miss. And that'll be on one of the final slides here. But yeah, I'm kind of bummed that we weren't able to do the live example of pulling comps on Zillow, but hopefully that was thorough enough. You guys get the gist of it. So now after pulling comps, you have your value of what the property is going to be worth after it's fixed up. So now you need to know what's it going to take to fix it up. And so obviously the absolute best way is to get bids from a qualified contractor. However, as you gain relationships in the market, you're going to start to get a feel or even track, it'd be best if you try to track what your previous renovation costs are. So then you can know very accurately what it's going to be to renovate it. But however, on this next slide, I've got some rule of thumbs. And again, these are just that. They're not hard and fast. They're not very accurate, but they can give you a good estimate of how to do repairs. And also, Brian, if you're still here after I go over this slide, if you'd like to talk about kind of like what your team's doing, that'd be cool too. But are you up for that?
Yeah, I can touch on it a little bit.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. So, yeah, as you guys know, or Chase, I don't know if all you guys know Kyle Miller out in Charlottesville. I was with him for like a good year. So then I had just started mine, I'd say the end of February. And I just kind of started off rip with, I hired two VAs. So it's just me and two VAs right now. I'm doing all of acquisitions and dispositions. So I'm doing all of that. We do a lot of cold calling and texting. So right now in my operation, with every list I pull, I send it out text campaign, and I do that. And I hit it twice. So then everybody that doesn't reply, I go ahead and put them in through a cold call campaign, and my VAs kind of handle all that stuff for me. And all the interested leads, I just kind of talk to them. So I'm right now I'm in Harrisonburg, or I guess you could say Rockingham County, Augusta County. Did a deal in Richmond, and I wanted to test. Right now, I'm testing out some virtual markets as well. One in Georgia and one in Ohio. So a lot of testing. It's still early, but yeah, that's kind of what I got going on now. Um, did a few deals in Waynesboro. Uh, like I said, one in Richmond, and trying to get this one done in Harrisonburg. So yeah, just been doing a lot of acquisitions throughout the day. Um, but yeah, I really wanted to see how the Harrisonburg market would go first, because I did see a lot of people say just no matter what, you should try the market in your backyard. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, and I want to just be active here, just kind of see what I can get going before hitting up some more bigger markets and doing that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
right now it's a lot of testing, still early, but yeah, just a lot of cold calling, a lot of texting, um, and yeah, just trying to get things moving slowly.
So when you're looking at a deal, especially in the virtual markets, this will be really helpful for a lot of people.
Hmm.
How are you estimating the rehabs? Are you having a price per square foot sort of thing, or are you doing just like, so here on the screen you guys can see is this is just like a ballpark figure that we use,
Uh-huh.
um, and so once once we get kind of done talking about how Brian's system, I can kind of touch more on what light, average, and heavy mean. But what are you guys kind of doing? Are you doing like price per square foot or something similar to that?
So I don't do any like price per square footage. I mostly, I guess I when I speak to the seller, I try to just see what they believe or what they think needs to be updated. I just ask kind of like, when was the last time you made kitchen renovations, bathroom renovations, and I get a good outlook on it. And I know like a lot with wholesaling, sometimes it turns out where I get a contract too high and I'll have to kind of go back and talk them down to get the deal done. So I primarily don't want to get pictures of the property, and I really want to kind of estimate the repairs, I guess, just kind of from
Talking to them.
like from experience of just working with Kyle. Like he'll say a kitchen, you want to get it done is about 5K, bathroom, they'll just call it 4 or 5K. And I kind of add it up that way. And then where, of course, I'm going with worst case scenario on the pricing or the repairs, and then I kind of just go it off that way. I kind of just mentally add it all up, and kind of go with those repairs, and that's kind of how I come up with my offer most of the time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's honestly what we do too. But um, kind of the catch with that too is like you've got the experience. You know what I mean? You've done
Yeah.
it. So if you're starting off, it makes it a little tougher. So here's some rough rules of thumb that we do. So like a light rehab would essentially mean there's nothing to really do. You've got carpet, paint, maybe change out some fixtures like electrical fixtures, and that's pretty much it. You very just clean up, very simple deal. Average rehab, you're probably doing the same thing as a light rehab, but you might have a roof. You probably got to update the kitchen and baths a little bit, but nothing really too crazy. And then the heavy rehab, you're talking gut. You've got to go in there, update the electrical, needs roofing, HVAC, everything. maybe siding and windows, everything too. And so that's kind of how we have these broken out. We also do a price per square footage estimate. So I think, like for something very light, it's like 15 to 17 a square foot, about 24 for an average, or 35 a square foot for heavy. And we just kind of use these ballpark ideas, and then or the square foot. They're pretty similar when you do the math. They'll come out to be pretty close. Any questions on those?
I got a question for Brian. Is he like the property he was offering on Liberty Street? Were you trying to wholesale that, or are you going to renovate that and then put it back on the market?
Yeah, so I actually was looking to wholesale it primarily. Yeah. I'm actually right now I'm like 100% wholesaling just to build
Okay.
capital. But yeah, I was looking to wholesale it.
What so how do you kind of handle that? I think we've touched on this before, but how do you handle that with like the seller aspect of it when you're going to wholesale? You just say, I'm not sure which one of my partners I'm going to be working with on it to assign it to them. Like, how do you handle that aspect of it when you're trying to bring
that's a
people
good
through?
question because yeah, that's a good question because a lot of sellers kind of wonder on that. So most of the time when the property is vacant, it's kind of simple. I just put a lockbox and say like, hey, I'm gonna get some contractors in here and we're gonna get some quotes. But say like a seller does live in the property, what I say is, hey, like I have a couple guys that I know that I can partner up with this, and they're my financial partners.
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, and I'll just be like, I'm just not sure who I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with the guy that's the best fit for me and who can go in with it on me. And we might have to come see the property like twice or maybe 3 times.
And then try to have like an open house for those couple times.
That sort of thing. So when they see like 5, 6 people show up, they're not kind of alarmed and they kind of know what's going on.
Yeah. Makes sense. And then that also on the HUD, that's like, well, that's how my partners and I work things out when they see your fee too.
Right. And that's also to add on to that is like when I on my purchase agreement, obviously when they see assignability, they're kind of like thrown off. And I just kind of say like, hey, like we might close in my partner's LLC, and that's just to make sure like we just save some time and get ahead of anything that might pop up.
Well, one thing I would say about that too, I mean, that's a really good way to handle that. And those are some gold nuggets that Brian's just tossed out here, because that's like, you hear all this stuff about wholesaling, especially if you're looking to get started in wholesaling, and how easy it is, but it's just there's a lot of little things too that's just not talked about that makes it tricky. Like the lockbox, showing other people that when there's tenants there, how do you some people might balk on the CD when they see your assignment fee, how to handle that. So yeah, that's just gold. The other thing I was going to say too is like I've noticed with commercial real estate or those types of deals where it's definitely for investment only, then it's extremely common to have assignability on it, because like if you're buying a commercial deal, you might not even have the LLC set up yet that you're buying the property in. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting. It's kind of a hurdle that you have on residential stuff, but if you ever assign commercial stuff, then it makes it a little easier for that. We could probably do something sometime too, where you touch on the wholesaling more if you like, Brian, because it's always interesting to hear about those businesses.
Okay, no, definitely. Yeah, and I seen when you guys had Kyle on a little bit ago, I was on and he kind of talked about everything. I thought he was dropping some good nuggets on that one. Yeah, I'll be down.
Yeah. Are you finding it harder to find deals right now with the way the market is, or how are things for you on the wholesaling front?
So a lot for me, it's a lot of testing. Because like I do want to hit some virtual markets where maybe they're not, where there's like, I guess for me, I want to pick markets where there's a lot of cash buyer activity. So I know if I do get a deal, I can hand it over to somebody, or I have a big pool of people to hand it to. But for Harrisonburg, I haven't been able to, I don't have a lot of data points because I've only done it for like a month or two. But for like my responses I'm getting, I feel like I'm getting a good amount of leads for the area. So I don't think it's been hard, but I'm really just, I think it comes down to the level of marketing you're doing and like how much time you're putting into it. But I think there's deals out here for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something you could reach out to. You already reached out to me, but Matthias too, if he knows of somebody that might be interested. And then I'm sure Kyle was doing this, but have you already like pulled cash buyers from the area?
I did on prop stream once.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got my assistants to cold call them, and I text them. I pulled some cash buyers, but a lot of them weren't really interested in buying right now.
Hmm.
So it's kind of how
Okay.
that went. Yeah.
And I know Bailey was using PropStream too, and I tried it for a little bit. But what do you think about PropStream's data? Like when I was going to try to find leads and stuff from there, it didn't seem for our area. It just didn't seem that good, and I think part of that is because Virginia doesn't have foreclosure data like other states does. Like it doesn't have to be reported.
Hmm.
But like a lot of some of the data was just old. Like what did you? How are you thinking about it, or what are you seeing?
Yeah. So no, that's a good point because the pre foreclosures that's on there, I think in the area they just have one or something like that, and then like tax delinquent is probably like I'd say 30 properties, and they're like old properties.
Yeah.
um, that even when I first started wholesaling, I was seeing on the tax delinquent. So I don't think those are good, but for like the high equity list where it's people that have owned the properties for a while, those have been pretty accurate.
Okay.
And those are like the list. I actually pulled a few deals out of that in Augusta County on the high equity. So I think the high equity is the information is kind of accurate, but everything else is kind of yeah, it's wishy-washy. I am looking for other software, if there is more like accurate ones for sure.
Um,
Yeah, another thing I noticed about PropStream, I'm trying to pull like multifamily, like smaller multifamily for a couple of clients I'm working with. And I don't know if it's house that is classified in Rockingham and Harrisonburg as far as multifamily, but there's a lot of like duplexes that come up. There's just one side, so it's not actually like multifamily. And PropStream has like a really hard time separating the two. So that list has been a little wonky, but it has given me some good data. And being able to pull do skip tracing from it, their skip tracing is pretty good for me. But yeah, I'm open to other software as well. So
Um,
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I just have been pulling lists. So I don't really even, since I'm a realtor, I mean, we have other tools like we can just use the MLS or other comping tools to where it really hasn't been worth it because you can just pull the list from a third party provider and then you're kind of good to go and you skip trace it from there, you know. And then for anybody who's confused too, PropStream is a software / service where it's like $100 a month, and they can help you with comping, finding some leads. So you can check that out. Just Google PropStream. That is not on one of the resources here at the end, so that's kind of cool. We touched on that. We're getting back in really quick to the flipping numbers. So if you are flipping a house or doing wholesaling, this is kind of the formula that a lot of people use. This is actually what I use. Is your maximum offer price is 70% of the final value of the property after renovation is done, minus the repair cost. So if you're wholesaling, you also need to subtract for your fee. So let's say the cost of the property or let's say the value of the property is 100 grand after it's done. That'd be 70,000 is what you offer, minus the repairs. Let's say the repairs are 15 grand. So that puts you at 55,000 for your maximum offer price. If you're wholesaling and trying to make a 10 grand fee, then you've got to offer 45 as your max. A big thing though that I have under here is, especially with the way the market has shifted, that I'm not sure if a lot of people talk about, is wholesaling is just, you got to understand your numbers. So Brian was talking a lot about how he's testing things. He's testing his systems. You just have to know where your market is. It may be where, you know, a lot of buyers were at this formula, for the 70%, but some in the market might be paying 75% now, where you could make that additional 5% spread. You could, before where you may have not been able to do a deal at 70% ARV. Now this 5% could be your fee. And, you know, if you're buying if the contract's for a $200,000 property is the ARV, then that's a 10 grand spread. So, you know, not anything to scoff at, that's for sure. The other thing is I like to break down what that 30% represents. So that formula of the 30% assumes your cost to purchase. So your closing costs for your financing and your settlement company, holding the project. And this is assuming hard money for both, you know, your financing, your sales costs. So you've got 6% to a realtor, and you've got probably about another percent, usually less, to a settlement company on the back end when you sell it. So your profit margin is about 15%, is what you look for. And again, this is all just a rough ballpark number, but for rule of thumb, I stick to that. And then I have a minimum too, where especially in this market, if you're not making 25,000, then it's really, you know, you got to look closely if it's worth it or not. If you have absolutely nothing to do and maybe it's 20, then it makes sense, but things can go quick. Things can go wrong quick in these projects. Foundation repair comes up you weren't expecting, market shifts, etc. Something you overlooked, just a couple of things can really add up and eat away at your profit margin and have you break even or red real quick. So we are going to get into single family rental rule of thumb. So anyone that's familiar with Bigger Pockets and have checked out the rental rules of thumb, then they're going to be familiar with these. A lot of people, especially clients out of the area that I've had calling me, they're looking at the 1% rule right now. They want to buy something that's 1%, or they want to have $200 a door. So that's all just ways that you can look at what makes sense for your investment strategy. So again, the 1% would be if you bought 100,000 property, you want that property to be making you 1% of that, which is 1,000 a month. 1.5, 1,500, 2%, 2,000, etc. And then the other one that a lot of people were looking at was 200 per door. And that's just a common one. I know some other investors look for 300 a door. They're not going to do the rental deal. So, and the big caveat with this is you just got to make sure that you're including reserves for CapEx, maintenance, and everything. So we generally try to assume that we're going to be hiring a property manager. So you got Bill, if you're looking at having Bill manage your properties, then you got to factor in his fee. I think Bill already left, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. I was trying to give him trying to give him a shout out. He might see it in one of the recordings, but yeah, so just keep all that stuff in mind. And as a note, like I was saying at the very beginning, these are just rough guidance numbers. I found them to work pretty well for me, but they may not work well for you depending on what your strategy is. So just always track your numbers, use your due diligence, and keep that all in mind. So the only way to really know what your numbers are going to be is to just calculate all of them, calculate all your costs, calculate the ARV and everything. So I'm not going to really bore you all with the metrics here, but I have it laid out so that if you're watching this, you can just kind of pause it and get a little bit of a definition on all these things. So cash on cash return, whatever you invest, let's say you put $20,000 down, that's your percentage return on that money. Equity is what you owe. Equity is what you own in the property. So if you put $20,000 down on a $100,000 house and your house is worth $100,000, you have $20,000 in equity. Return on equity is another indicator that a lot of investors look at. So you might be making a 10% cash on cash return, but your property's gone up in a lot of value and your return on equity is low. So you've got a lot of equity just sitting there that's not making you money. So here's a little bit of a breakdown of how that works. And cash on cash return or return on equity, that depends on your personal investment goals. So you just got to figure that out. I think a slide got moved there a little bit. Oh, no, it didn't. It is out of order a little bit, but here are some things to look for again. We touched on population and job growth before. Diverse employment I touched on a little bit, but here's some of the big three things that are generally nice to look at. Government jobs. You want to make sure that it's not a government job, obviously, that is prone to maybe moving. So like certain Army bases, government contract jobs, but if it's a long-term government position, they're more than likely not going to be going away and they're not going to be laying people off. Education, so colleges, they're very well standing jobs through economic downturns, and same with healthcare. People are always going to be cared for. So Centera is a big one over in Rockingham County. These are just types of employers that you want to be on the lookout for, and the more of those that are recession resistant, the better. Low crime rates. We touched on the particular neighborhood of investing, and then median income and median home price. So that's just going to give you an idea of what your end buyer or tenant is going to be able to afford, and what you should be looking for if you're looking to flip a house. So you want to always be usually right around the median home price, unless you just really know this is a very good investment property to go on the higher end. And then here's the final slide that had all the other tools we were talking about. Any questions on this, guys? Or any other tools too? If you have any other tools that you think are helpful that I don't have on here, then feel free to give a shout out and I can add them to it. Another one that I don't have on here is city data. Or actually might be city feet. I'll have to come back to that one. It's city something, but it's like if you've got datausa.io and bestplaces.net, it's very similar to that. And then the only one we didn't really talk about throughout the meetup today is you got your GIS systems, which you have locally. You've got Cozy, which is kind of like a property management and tenant screening software. Stessa's property software system, and then AirDNA. That's a very popular one for people who are looking to do Airbnbs. Do you find that to be pretty accurate, Mattias, or what are your thoughts on AirDNA?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I did research on it with Massanutten, but I don't actively subscribe to it or anything. The people that I've worked with that are bought Airbnbs have found it to be pretty useful. I think there was some question about whether they were factoring in the cleaning fees into their analysis. So that might be something to keep in mind if that's kind of a net even, like you just charge them what it's going to cost the cleaners to clean. So it's not really a profit. But otherwise, I think people have found that very, very, very helpful.
From what you were seeing with like your clients, did they think, because I know AirDNA has like revenue projections, did they find those projections to be pretty accurate or?
Yeah, I think so for the most part. Like I've had people that have beat them, that have outperformed. And I think that's kind of one thing that's also important to understand about Airbnb is you can make it do, like you were talking about it being business. Like if you run the business well, it will perform better. So I was factoring in, occupancy being about 30%, 33% a year. But if you're really active with managing the prices and trying to get things filled and booked by, let's discount this week because we don't have anything there. Probably fill it a lot more than that 33%. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good guesstimate, but know that you can do better or worse. Like one of the reasons I haven't actually bought an Airbnb and I might at some point, but I don't know if I have the bandwidth to really manage it well. And that's something I take seriously because what's the point then?
Yeah, I think that's really important with Airbnbs, like you're saying, like it's going to take a good amount of time. I mean, all these things are going to take some time, and depending on the strategy you're going, it's going to take more time. But Airbnb is one of those where it's on the very more active end of the spectrum. So to do it well, just keep that in mind,
You got to be responsive with people asking questions. You got to be on the ball with that kind of thing. But then also just looking at your bookings and trying to increase those through different methods. It takes attention.
I think too, one thing that might help people that are looking to start off in Airbnbs is like, I think a good idea would be to just stay at like 3 of them or a few in the area, because we stayed at one actually over the weekend near where we are. And it was one that was highly rated and pretty nice, but when you actually go to them, you're like, oh, the grill's not working and stuff like that. Then you kind of see what the owner is going to have to deal with and all the little things they have to look out for. Like we had a hot tub at ours and the hot tub wasn't kept up the best. Like, oh, we were excited for the hot tub. Now it doesn't. Now this is kind of affecting our impression on the property. So those are things to keep in mind too, because you just kind of see the numbers going in, or it's a thought, but when it becomes a real thing, it's pretty different,
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, if there's any questions, we're just going to stick around and kind of chat a little bit now. Everyone's welcome to unmic if you're working on a deal, if you want to just chat about anything. Yeah, our next meetup's May 19th again, but thanks everybody for coming, and we can still hang out here for the next 15, 20 minutes or so and kind of catch up.
One more tool I was curious about is Deal Machine. Brian, have you had any success with that or tried it?
No, so I know what Deal Machine is, but I haven't tried it. I'm actually
Gotcha.
intrigued on seeing what that's talking about. But yeah, I haven't tried it.
Gotcha.
Have you?
I signed up for like a couple of days and realized that I wasn't going to be able to use it, so I canceled it. But I want to try it eventually. But I follow Ryan Dossie. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He does wholesaling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was going to try a method he was using, but he was suggesting like pulling a list, going to the properties and taking a picture, and then doing like their automatic mailers. And I just wasn't going to have time for it. But I think that could be an interesting strategy. But for me, I'd rather just save the time driving and just write a handwritten note or something.
Right. Yeah, I feel like where I'm at now, a lot of my time is just acquisition. Like a phone call could easily go like 30 minutes. And then when you're doing like 40 or 50 of them a day or something like that, is just, yeah, it's hard to find time to do like the driving around trying to find deals.
Yeah.
I think what I'm going to do is I have a few other like guys I know in the area that like want to learn wholesaling. So I was just going to kind of teach them and then see if they could like do that for me and like probably work something out with them to try to implement it in. Yeah. I did have a question though. Chase and Mattias. It's Mattias, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the Airbnb, I'm actually like really kind of interested in that like business model. I know like the big thing with Airbnb, it's like the management and the time with having to like do the turnaround for all the guests and stuff. Have you guys ever heard of like anything where you can hire a management company or I guess have somebody go and do that stuff for you? Is there like a service for that? Or is it always like the host does it themselves?
There's definitely services out there that they're in Massanutten. There's a guy that you can kind of get to do anything you want, anything you need, check-ins, check-outs. He can arrange cleanings, which I mean you can have people that do everything. And
okay.
There's companies that will help with the bookings and stuff as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I was interested in that.
I'm not familiar with the one in Massanutten. I haven't researched Airbnbs much, but I know a realtor in Charlottesville. She does a lot of Airbnbs, and I think she's at Lydia Cabins, which is in Standardsville. They'll like do everything for you, take care of managing everything, and they just charge your first night's rent for their services, which sucks on a weekend, but if you have like a week or two, like that's not bad.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing to know your market too, because in Massanutten, that's there you will get week bookings all summer, but then in the winter it's pretty much weekends. So
yeah, that eats the profit margins a lot there. It's when you get to the weekend season, I think the big thing, just looking at the financials of a lot of Airbnbs that have come on the market in my area in the past year is like, just, make sure you're really, because you even have more stuff to account for because you've got sometimes, landscaping, or you've got all the utility bills that you're dealing with. So just make sure that you've really got everything, because on a lot of those financials, sometimes they just don't put that stuff up there. So if you're not looking, then what it looks like you're clearing and what you're actually clearing can be dramatically different. Especially for how much effort you're gonna have to put into it, so. And Bill, you were talking about Deal Machine. I'd actually tried that for a couple months, but it was kind of like what Brian was saying, is that I just, I was like, well, when I'm driving out on appointments, I'll just, and I see something, I can pull it up. But if you're trying to, for me, if you're trying to go out just to do it, then it was better time just to mail, or more cost effective to do other things, because you're using a lot of, it's not free. You're still using a lot of gas. You've got a machine, which isn't free. And then their mailers, their mailers are nice in a sense that it's done for you, but I forgot what the price is, but it was double what I pay normally. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah, that could get expensive quick. I think the ones that the program I was, you take a picture of it and then it sends them a postcard with the picture of their house.
Yeah, that's what I was doing too.
Okay. Yes, that could be cool. I have heard of people recruiting Uber drivers and stuff, and they're just like, hey, if you pass the property that looks wonky, take a picture of it and you'll get paid for it. So that would be kind of cool if you could build a fleet of people just they're already doing it, and just, I don't know, it could be cool. But
yeah, I think I was, and one of the big things that kind of shifted my mind with this is actually Kyle, in the sense of direct mail isn't a cost, it's a investment. Because a lot of times, and one of the things that I would struggle with too, is that, you do it once or twice, you don't get a deal, or you stop, you know what I mean? You put out X amount of dollars and like, wow, is this going to come through? But one, you got to keep doing it because you're investing in your next deal. And then, so Deal Machine though, and just in my opinion, was like, okay, I've got this monthly fee, and then their mailers are more expensive. So especially if you're talking about somebody else driving for you, then it's that's a more expensive tier for them.
Yeah.
And the mailers are more expensive. So I could just see that one where it'd be like, okay, my margins on this thing are probably going to be not that great.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And especially if you're driving yourself, I don't know. I actually didn't get that many leads. I think it was 60 leads. But I also noticed that the other thing with that was my angriest responses were from Deal Machine.
Oh, really?
I had one guy call me and just absolutely insanely upset. And I was like, and it's just, what the postcards look like. It's just their house saying, hey, I just drove by. I didn't know if you'd want to sell. And he's like, I'm going to let this house rot into the ground before I sell it to anybody. And I was like, okay, well.
Crazy.
He said a lot more colorful words than that, but I don't know if we're still recording, so yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense though, because Deal Machine, I could see it making sense for somebody who doesn't have money to get started, but it's less to start up. But yeah, like you said, your margins are great at scale. Yeah, because I think Ryan Dossie said he's even at 3,000 per deal is the cost of his acquisition, which seems like a lot, but he's got a big company going with it and stuff. But
that's true. Yeah, if you had where Deal Machines cost you $3,000 and your wholesale deal's 10, so your spread 7 or something, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess I just haven't tested it enough, but I just saw I'd be the one driving around. That's a lot of my time, and I feel there are other methods that can hit more.
Yeah, for sure.
And so.
Yeah, I was just curious.
But yeah.
Do you guys think there's going to be a lot of foreclosures near the end of this year? What's your thoughts on that?
I don't. Especially when COVID was hitting, and I like your thing too, Mattias, but when COVID was hitting, I was like, this is going to be really bad. in the sense of a lot of people had lost their jobs and there's forbearance, or you saw the forbearance numbers, but a lot of people are coming out of forbearance okay. And the foreclosures, they've got some that are backed up, but the ones that are coming through, the way the inventory is, it's so low that demand, I think, just is going to neutralize, like it'll just absorb it. But even so, the way everything's going, I don't see foreclosures starting to come on the market till next year anyway, for sure. So like, if that were to happen, it's not going to be this year in the timeline, but I think we're going to need to see interest rates start to tick up before we see anything that's going to really shake anything, if that makes sense. And our lending has been so, like, I'm trying to do a refinance, and it's crazy the amount of paperwork they're making me do. So I think that they're much more thorough with the underwriting. So unless something shifts in the economy where jobs really start falling off and stay off, and or interest rates really go up, those are the two things that I really personally would see affecting the market. Prices may come down a little bit as interest rates go up.
So you guys see the housing prices slowing down or still going hot and heavy, or what's your thoughts on that as maybe interest rates are going to climb a little bit?
The demand could lessen if the interest rates go up. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like things are going to, things seem frothy, like as to what is happening. A lot of heavy interest, or there's bidding wars, et cetera. A lot of demand for the houses that are on the market. So that doesn't seem great long term, but I don't know. It just seems like it will dwindle, and then houses will sit a little bit longer, and then maybe that will make, you be able to negotiate more on a house or something like that. But it doesn't, the ingredients don't seem to be there for some sort of big adjustment.
It just seems like to me in the past 6 months or more, it seems like most of the buyers were out there, hey, I want to buy this house, before it goes up too much, or get it in before the interest rates go up and get it under my belt. And so they're willing to pay extra for that house just so they can get it. And while the interest rates are low, and at that time, maybe the housing prices were a little bit lower. And
well, another interesting perspective that I've thought about too is just the probably increased inflation rate with all the money pumped into the economy. And if you factor that in, is 11% higher in a purchase price really that big of a deal?
Yeah.
I think inflation's going to go up myself.
Yeah, I mean, if there's, that would be my opinion as well. And so if inflation's at 11% or 25% or whatever, and the house prices went up by 11, then you're probably going to be fine longer term. I mean, speculation, but
yeah, I kind of think it with that too, Mattias. Like I think one of the things that's driving a lot of, especially the commercial investment, is, Devin, you've talked to Paul. He was saying outside investment. You were seeing people with 1031 exchange money and a lot of equity. But I think what's pushing a lot of it now too, and the why people are accepting lower yields, is because, especially with the COVID money coming out, they're seeing, okay, hard asset, probably going to be inflation with all this stimulus money. If I'm paying, let's say with what I'm looking at, a 7 cap and 7.8 cap, well, if the inflation happens, like everything's looking like it's going to happen, which no one knows, but it's looking like it's going to happen, then this is going to be a great deal for it. And if I'm wrong and it's still a 7 cap, then I'm still making money, but it's just not as much. And you know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the commercial markets. I think a lot of people are betting on there's going to be inflation, and if inflation happens, and what's going to happen with rents,
Like on the syndications, though, the only way they're going to make any money on the inflation side is they got to get the NOI up, which means they got to get their rents up. Mm-hmm. And if inflation takes off in the employment area, employment income, salaries are going up, matching inflation, that sort of thing, then those prices will go up, for the syndications. but that's the only way those usually go up, in some way to boost the income through inflation or some other means that they might be able to accomplish. And that's how they're going to make their money. So I think that's going to happen, but usually the incomes take a little bit longer. Usually you start seeing prices at the grocery store and cars and all sorts of stuff, even houses, go up. And then they reach a certain point, and then the people go like, wait a second, hey, my paycheck hasn't gone up. And then they start pressuring their employer, and next thing you know, they're starting to go up.
But then all that happens, and while the stuff at the grocery store is going up, the rent's going up too.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, the operator's going to see the inflation happening. They're not going to wait till their paycheck goes up. They're going to be part of the pressure on the employee to pressure their employer to get more money to pay for their rent. So that's my opinion, though. I mean, but I think Mattias had a really good point. And the other thing that's going to stop going back kind of the foreclosure thing is we would need interest rates to go up, as well as home prices to come down before I think foreclosures would be an issue, because people have so much equity in their house right now. If you own, you have, and let's say you've bought the past year or longer, then you've got equity in your house. So you really got to have some other sort of economical shift to kind of get you out of that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing. Like, if somebody's facing foreclosure, why not sell? Like, you're probably not going to eat your shirt. Like, I had somebody turn around and sell within 6 months, and after fees still make like $16,000, and they didn't do anything, or they did very little to the property. So, I mean, it was a unique circumstance, but still, I think it's if somebody's facing foreclosure, they're probably able to sell and get out.
Yeah.
So the place to be is in real estate.
Yes,
You want to be in hard assets. So when inflation does hit, hey, if you got a $250,000 rental and it goes up 10%, there's $25,000 worth of equity in your pocket. So it's, well, not in your pocket, but in value. And if it goes up for several years, next thing you know, you got a $300,000 piece of property, at least on paper.
Yeah, hedging your inflation risk there at least. But
so if you want to buy a house,
yep.
Good luck.
Have you guys ever watched the TV show Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
Ron Swanson just like buying his gold and burying it. That's all I think about when I think about people hedging against inflation.
yeah.
You know who's building that complex over there? I can't think of it. It was in the papers. 241 is the name of the organization. This can be the housing development. 241. It's over there off of Blue Ridge Drive and Country Club Road.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure who's building it. If I can figure it out.
Another thing that might happen, I mean, you're starting to see it in the paper too a little bit, is looks like there's a lot more building projects on a larger scale coming out here just recently. I think we may see more of that down the road too.
Yeah, we'd have to like, if supply picks up. See, that's the other thing that I guess we didn't touch on. I kind of forgot. So you've got people have equity in their house. There's so much demand. Interest rates are low. So if interest rates go up, that's obviously going to taper the buyer's pressure. But there's also people aren't really able to build because of the supplies being so high. So if more supply comes on the market, that could shift things too. But
I think the building supplies is, I don't know if that's what you were talking about, but I think,
lumber, yeah.
I think building supplies will level off and probably come back to earth.
The other interesting theory I heard of was we were talking about inflation, and people were like, well, how has inflation not happened yet? Because I don't know if this is accurate, but I saw a statistic saying that it was a fifth of all US dollars were printed last year. Does anybody know if that's accurate?
Yep, it is.
It is. Yeah, so they're like, well, how is inflation not showing yet? And then the other thought was, well, it's showing in the material cost. So as commodity prices have gone up quite a bit since last year, and thought as part of that might be reflecting the inflation. And so I thought it could be showing too in the sense of housing prices and demand for commercial investment properties too. So
Well, they also too, if you went back and looked at some history, in Germany, they had that hyperinflation back in I guess it was
In World War I and II.
1920-ish, somewhere in that 22-ish or something like that. There was, wheelbarrow money. That's what they were using. And if you go back and look in history, they had pretty calm inflation even up to the year before that hit. And then it just exploded. Inflation just exploded. And they were trying to compare that to the United States. We're kind of on the same path. So, I mean, there's the history, or the jury's still out on whether we'll have that hyperinflation or just bad inflation, and whether the government can control it in any fashion or another. And my guess is they're not going to be able to control inflation. I think they're going to have a hard time doing that. With so much debt that we have, they can't raise the interest rates too much because they got $30 trillion worth of debt. And they got to pay for it. So if you go from, 3% payment on your debt to 5% or 6%, you're double your payment the way they operate. And I don't know if our budget can tackle that or not.
yeah, and even raising taxes won't help
No,
that change. So
that's politically, hey, you want to lose your job, raise taxes,
yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's interesting. How did Germany work that out too? Because I wonder, once you get into that hyperinflation, obviously how things are today, but what does that period even look like? They're just like, all right, we're going to start over.
There's some thought there's been thought about it that our government is controlling everything so much and preventing things from happening. If you think about it, you guys that are, your guys' age, you all are a lot younger than I am. You guys are getting royally screwed right now by the government. And I'm not even sure you guys know it, because if they'd have let the economy falter instead of propping it up, your housing that's 300,000 today would probably be 150, and you might be able to afford a better house, or you might, cars wouldn't have jumped up, or all this other stuff, and grocery prices would have been cheaper, and your dollar would have been worth more, and you would have more value for your buck. But the government intervened and gave all the stimulus money out, propped up everybody. So therefore, inflation took off and things went right. Why do you think last year most people were doing fine? Didn't need that stimulus check, but they were getting it. And it was all screwed up. So they messed with it. And I think that's somehow going to come back and bite them.
Yeah, that's the other big thing too that I've noticed. And within this past year, after all the COVID stuff, is getting contractors to do work, and then two, if you talk to your contractors, they can't get help, because the help generally for, let's say, a carpenter, they're probably paying their helper $12 an hour, which is, still a good wage, at least back then before the inflation. Let's assuming that is what we're thinking it is. Now they can't get anybody because they've got the stimulus money. And are they still doing the unemployment benefits as well? Didn't they extend that?
But it's just not as much as $600 a week like it was, during the peak.
Yeah, I'm just curious. They're still doing the $300 a week.
I had a
$300 a week. Yeah.
Friend, she's like 24, 5. She just recently got married, but she was on unemployment last time I checked. That was like a couple months ago. It's just crazy to me, but
I think it's supposed to run out after 6 months, and I think they have it extended now to where you can take it. There's no deadline, like it doesn't fall off, and they had that 300. They dropped from 6 down to 3, but that $300 bonus. Well, like, I don't know. I mean, if you're doing that, let's say the total amount is $500 a week, you're making $2,000 a month, and then you get stimulus checks, and they're paying your rent too right now. So if you're unemployed, can show you're affected by COVID. I wish Kevin were here. He could probably enlighten us on some of it too. Since he can't talk, but
No, I can talk.
so yeah, tell me if I'm wrong on that stuff, Kevin. But what I understand is, I think that unemployment is still going on, which is like 300 a week, then plus your regular unemployment benefits, and then you've got, obviously, the government's paying for your rent here in Virginia. So if you were laid off, you've got your unemployment money coming in, you've got the government paying your rent, and you're getting stimulus checks. Is that all right?
I think the government comes in and gives you a massage also. I think that's mandatory now. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But no, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to the unemployment deal. I don't need it, so I never paid attention to it. It started to make me sick after one of you just said, you couldn't get anybody to do any work anymore, and that's true, because you were being paid They took human incentive away from us, and getting off on a rant here, but that's part of the reason communism failed, because nobody wants to aspire to work harder to get farther in life. So breaking that trend is a much bigger conversation that we probably need beer for. But the only thing I can comment on is the RRP program. That's pretty much like free money, and they're constantly working the details out on that. They're tweaking the details. I mean, the Virginia right now is really behind in processing their RRP funds. Yep. They have apparently more money than they can spend, but they don't have enough people to process it. Very low threshold on proving that you had a COVID issue.
Yep.
I've submitted one application for somebody and haven't gotten the money yet. But I think the government has another like 8 days to get the money to me. But apparently they're hiring a whole bunch of people to process those applications.
Well, that's the thing too, is I had one, when they talked to me, because I have one tenant that's doing that, and it's they had everything in on the 8th, and it was supposed to be approved that same day, because they were like waiting on one piece of paperwork, and then they said it'd be 15 to 20 business days before the check was out. So it's like, if you have a tenant that's months behind, you're not going to get paid for another month. So let's say they're 4 months behind, you got to add a 5th month. It's just like, if you're a landlord right now and you're not well capitalized, that's one thing I could see, is there being some inventory coming on the market from landlords, because if you run into a couple bad situations, or you get a tenant in there, like I know another investor I know of that he had a tenant put him in there like last year, and she paid the first month, and the second month COVID hit, and then they didn't pay until, they're out now, like as of a month ago. So they pretty much didn't pay for a year.
Yeah.
Well, technically that thing's against the Constitution for the government to do what they did. It seems like our legal system is not doing their job right now, because there was like 3 constitutional things that our government has stepped on last year.
Yeah. The big one was it violated the takings clause, and the jury's still out on whether or not it's true violation, because the government's technically reimbursing you, but the problem is it's such a huge delay that are they reimbursing you? Yeah. So, and the CDC overstepping its bounds. The CDC used some law which enables it to basically, I don't know. Let's say we had some bat that was like killing everybody. The CDC could take efforts to destroy that bat. Well, they extended it to the point of like, well, you can't evict people because by extension we have that right. And I think 2 or 3 court cases have gone to pretty high level federal appeals, and all the court cases have found on the side of common sense and the side of landlords, saying that's bullcrap. The CDC has no authority to do that. However, they did not enjoin, for whatever reason, those judges did not enjoin the case. Meaning, if John Smith took the government to court, the judge found for John Smith and only John Smith. He didn't like strike it down for everybody. Yeah. Why he didn't strike it down for everybody, I have no idea. So the CDC is still issuing that same guidance. I had a briefing from VAMA last week on some of it, and actually there's an email in my inbox right now giving more guidance on it, because it's still confusing. Like, again, the other question is, if you give I'm in a situation now where I gave someone a 14-day notice, because y'all know it's changed from 5-day notice to 14 days. And like, even if she missed her deadline, but even if I go ahead and process the eviction right now, she's gotten an attorney, a legal aid attorney. And that attorney's wanting me to go ahead and process it for her because she's telling me she's going to complain in court that I denied her the ability to get free government money by not processing it for her. So to keep the peace, I'm just going to go ahead and process the application. But at the same time, I want to give the lady a 30-day notice because she has been such a problem on other levels, not financially related. And the jury's still out on that. Can you do that? Can you get rid of somebody who's not on a yearly lease, who's on a month-to-month lease, if they're behind on rent? Like I have no problem getting rid of her on a 30-day violation, or 30-day holdover tenancy if she wasn't behind on rent. But if she's behind on rent, it's almost like she's got more protection now. So they're incentivized not to pay the rent.
So I've heard of that, and I don't know if the process is longer now. And I've talked to multiple other investors here in Virginia where you can still, like, if it's another lease violation, which it sounds like it is for you, then you can still do that.
Well, again, that's under a lease violation issue. This is just one of those where, like, you have to give them 2130 and all that stuff. And it's, whether or not it's remediable is the question. It depends on that. But just for a myriad of reasons I won't waste y'all's time with, she needs to go. Like, she needs to be somebody else's problem in general. Because I haven't given her 2130 on every single thing, So she's a holdover tenant. Her lease is ended. She's gone, which goes automatically month to month per my lease and per the Code of Virginia. If you don't specify it, then the code, Title 55 something, says it automatically goes month to month. So I want to get rid of her. But because she's behind in rent, she actually has more protections than if she weren't behind in rent. So if that makes any sense, welcome to Bizarro World.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you should still be able to do what you were talking about, though. Like, if you're terminating her lease because she's month to month and you're just issuing a non-renewal and you're not pursuing or mentioning the funds at all, then you still shouldn't. I mean, it's not going to be easy still, from what I understand, but others you should still be able to get them out.
Yeah, and I'm going to. It's just that it's just ironic that if you're not behind in rent, it's easier to get you out than if you're behind in rent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
that is an upside down world. Lesson learned is everybody, please pay attention to who you vote for, local, state, and federal.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
I think landlords are on the losing side of that one because everybody thinks that landlords are loaded and got money to withstand everything that comes up. So people have no sympathy for landlords right now.
Oh no, we're all twirling our mustaches and swimming in our Scrooge McDuck vault. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
I think even when this moratorium ends, let's say it ends at the going through the end of June now. Let's say it goes, they lift it. I bet you at 8 o'clock in the morning on July 1st, there's going to be a line out the door of landlords in the court trying to get a court date. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, the next court date for you, because you were the 150th person to show up today, you're going to be in November 15th. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. So I tell you, the takeaway for me is unless they are just a stellar candidate, I'm not locking anybody into a month-to-month lease anymore either. Excuse me, a yearly lease anymore, which I never, ever used to be like that. But not just for the moratorium, but for the Code of Virginia now, you have less incentive to put someone on a long-term lease, again, because powers that be, the General Assembly made the law such that landlords are deterred from it, because now you have to offer them a 6-month payment plan or the lesser of their lease. So if they're on a month-to-month, then their payment plan is just a month. But if they have 6 months left on their lease or 8 months left on the lease or whatever, you have to offer them a 6-month payment plan and then jump through a bunch of other hoops. It's just,
that's really interesting.
Ill thought out laws by idiot politicians that just, thought they were making their constituents happy. They actually are making it more difficult for tenants to find good housing now, because now they're going to live, on a month-to-month basis going, well, I wonder if my landlord's going to get tired of my shenanigans this month, kick me out.
Yeah.
Because now, it's just a holdover situation. And again, being behind on the rent, like at least for me, they're not going to be behind on my rent because I collect first month's rent, security deposit, and final month's rent before they move in. So from here forward, they won't ever be behind on my rent, because once I collect it, if they screw up, then I'm kicking them out and I've already got their final month's rent. And
I didn't know you could do final month's rent too. That's good to know.
First,
'Cause I thought it was only 2.5 times was the maximum, or did they change that?
two times the security deposit. So, excuse me, security deposit is maximum of 2 times the rent. So if you're doing final month's rent, and I mean, here's the thing, I could just say, okay, first month's rent and 2 times the rent for security deposit, but it's just tomatoes and tomatoes. I just break it up into first month's rent, security deposit, and final month's rent. It's the exact same dollars though. Because if not, with that, the reason I do that, here's a nugget for any other landlords out there. The reason you do that is because tenants have a tendency to be like, hey, I'm moving out in 30 days. Just keep my security deposit as rent, as a final month's rent. Well, if you do that, now they're going to leave a disastrous house for you, right?
Yeah.
So because they're like, well, I lost my security deposit anyways because I turned it into rent. So I want them to know they've already paid the rent. Now they'll hopefully work harder to clean it. And,
Yeah.
So
That's smart. Thanks for that. So I'm working on trying to hopefully buy a house hack, and I think a couple of they have tenants in place. A couple of them just switched to month. So would you recommend keeping them at that for now until this?
I am. I mean, unless it's just a great tenant that I just really had for a long time, I'm not putting them on yearly leases because they end up having more protections. I mean, it's just my choice, and I mean, there's a lot of talk in the General Assembly that they're going to be trying to, like, all this stuff we're talking about is theoretically has a sunset. It had a sunset of July 1st of this year. Well, they got it extended until July 1st of 2022. So technically, it'll all go back to normal in 2022. But based on who has the General Assembly and the governorship right now, they're wanting to have this extended into perpetuity. Never let a crisis go to waste. That's certain political parties' mantra. So they're trying to change everything to make all this permanent, even after COVID is no longer an issue. I would just leave it month to month if I were you, but that's my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. Because I was thinking, I'm gonna lock them back into a yearly lease if they're willing, but yeah, thanks for the advice.
Yeah.
One
and I'm sorry, one other thing. Again, this is just coffee talk here, but because you now have to accept Section 8, that's a law now too. And make sure you don't ever tell people you're not going to, because they have the Virginia Housing Department is cold calling people to see if you accept Section 8. And if you don't, it's the exact same penalties had you said, hey, we don't rent to gay people or straight people or white people or black people. It's that kind of severity.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. And because of that, it's encouraging a lot of landlords to ask for a lot more rent money so that you get priced out of Section 8. Right. So when someone's talking about high rents, that's driving up rent costs also,
The best way to judge that is if you start getting calls and say, I have a voucher, I want to rent your apartment, then you realize your rent's too cheap. Then you just say, I'm going to take it off the market and I'm going to put it back on the next day at maybe $100 more or something, whatever you think the market rent is. I've heard before in the past. And I realized I'm too low.
Don't they pay a premium in a lot? Like we have one Section 8 tenant, and they pay what the market value is, really.
I mean, it depends. I mean,
sometimes they're paying over it.
They've got the I don't know. I haven't seen a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I think their rent is way too low. Now you get into 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, it's actually it seems like it's a good deal. But 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I don't know how they I don't have any 3-bedroom, 2-baths that a Section 8 tenant rents because I can get a lot more from the open market. But I mean, you also remember they don't just pay based on their published limits. They pay based on rent affordability and rent reasonableness, where they go in and they assess everything about your house, how many ceiling fans you have, and whether it has a 1-car garage or a 2-car garage, and all the amenities. So there's 2 governing things that lower the Section 8 rent.
Gotcha.
And you can't. I mean, it's a complex formula. You just gotta fill out their forms, send it to the calculator, and that is what it is.
But going back to you, Bailey, one thing you could maybe check with an attorney about is if you're living in a property, that I feel like that should be a whole different ballgame than if you're renting a property to a tenant. So now you've got tenants, let's say in 3 rooms, and you live in a room. Well, it's your premises, so that's not the same as evicting a tenant in a separate house. You know what I mean? That's completely different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I mean,
No, I mean, let me speak from the law enforcement side. If someone has established residency in a residence, like you got to go through the eviction process, period. Unless there's some kind of domestic violence or stalking warrant or EPO or PPO or something like that. So they still go through same eviction process. And the general rule of thumb, it's not a hard and fast thing, but general rule of thumb is like 2 weeks. Someone's living somewhere for 2 weeks. They're waking up there, they're brushing teeth there. So it's the totality of the circumstances. Whether or not they're getting mail there, they're getting bills in their name. That's where, the police come to your door. You want to get someone out. You can't just tell them, hey, get out, you're trespassing. You still have to go through eviction. It doesn't work that way.
Gentlemen,
that's not landlord, that's the cop speaking there. Yep.
what's that?
I was just going to say I have to step out quick. Sorry, guys. I'll catch you later.
Are you coming back or you gone for the night?
No, I have to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to head out too. So I guess we'll probably just wrap it up if that works for everybody.
Yep.
But sweet. Well, thanks for coming, guys, and we'll see you next month. We're just going to wrap out the next, closing of the deal, making offers and everything. So if anybody has any guest speakers they want in the next couple of months, feel free to shoot an email to Mattias or I, and we can try to line them up.
See you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
See ya.
Thanks everybody.